looking from the steps of the Center of International and Public Affairs. So we're going to try to get as close as we can while also chaotic very quickly. It's seemingly a lot of students just running every which way who don't really understand or know what's going on or how to best get out of the way, trying to see what's going on, still trying to take their cell phone videos, who are now in the midst of just chaos.
Yeah, everybody has a cell phone up. Look at that. Everybody's got a camera, and they're all encroaching onto the police officers. Let's go to Chris Christie, who sees how these cops are all getting circled by this big crowd. Chris?
Yeah, this contingent of officers, David, now in the unnerving position of being surrounded by protesters and news media alike adjacent to these protesters. You have several protesters we've seen throwing water bottles and throwing water at these officers. Now you see another confrontation. This is the second or third that we've seen here in the last 60 seconds, as this has definitely gotten physical along the northeast side. I should say the northeast side of Alumni Park. So a much larger group now you see has formed with, again, officers, protesters, news media, and perhaps even onlookers all in this area, and it is a recipe for disaster. LAPD really has their work cut out for them here to try and avoid confrontation, but they are left with no choice here, as these agitators and protesters are really acting up and choosing to get very aggressive with these police officers. I could tell you, just a few blocks away at Jefferson, there is another group of protesters that have formed a large blockage of that intersection. I think Hoover and Jefferson is where there is now a sit-in adjacent to campus. So now some of this protest is spilling into the exterior, and now you see more water bottles being thrown at these police officers as they begin closing in on these protesters. And they have those zip ties ready. They have less than lethal weapons ready. They've got tear gas, OC, pepper spray, all of their tools ready to go here. And if this crowd does not disperse, it's going to continue to get more and more heated. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, okay, let's check in with Josh Haskell, who is also on the ground watching. Let's check in with his vantage point. Josh. Josh, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm also doing my best to make sure we don't get sprayed with pepper spray. Yeah, we're seeing a number of officers flood into the scene right now. We just saw a group of LAPD officers, I want to show you what's happening, run to one of the buildings here on campus. And as Chris Christie was pointing out, you have way more than just protesters right now. You have college students, you have members of the Los Angeles community, which is making it very difficult for the LAPD and campus police to control this crowd. I just saw an LAPD officer walk by me, and she was screaming, "Hold the line, hold the line, hold the line." I've been to many of these protests and dispersal orders, but you could tell that they are having a difficult time right now holding the line, because there are so many different lines and so many different people out here, and we are doing our best to stay safe, because it does feel like at any minute, as you can see this line of LAPD officers now in front of the Dr. Joseph Medicine Crow Center for International and Public Affairs. That is the building that they are standing out in front of right now. And it does seem, the way the LAPD is acting and talking to each other, that they may be bringing in some type of tear gas or less lethal force up top to that line of officers. I'm seeing somebody move towards that direction right now, but definitely chaotic. It doesn't really even describe it, because we are on a college campus. Last day of classes is tomorrow, and clearly students are hearing about what's going on, and they are coming down to the center of campus. Again, I'm standing at Alumni Park. You can see the officers moving right now with our live picture, and they're doing their best to try and get this crowd under control, but the crowd is everywhere. There are not enough officers. It wouldn't surprise me if they brought in more officers. And as we often say, David and Ellen, in our jobs, I'm just not sure how this one ends, and that's something that I've been feeling all day being out here right now, because as the crowd continued to grow, and after the first groups of officers came in, they emboldened this group of protesters. The crowd grew, and I'm just not sure how this situation will resolve itself because of just the amount of people we have out here right now. David and Ellen, I'll send it back to you.
Josh, we've seen this crowd grow exponentially, but we are wondering, have they canceled classes tomorrow? Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is at the professor's discretion whether classes will be in person tomorrow or online. There was an email that was sent out to the campus community. We also received it at ABC7 Eyewitness News that was from the provost that explained that it's at the discretion of the professor whether they will be holding classes in person or online. And again, tomorrow's the final day of class, we're told, or Friday. Many students telling me they don't have classes on Friday, so tomorrow was their last day of classes. And then finals start, and it is unclear right now. Again, many of these students said we should be studying for finals, but this is happening on our campus. We have to be here to witness it. And as you can see what's unfolding right now, Sean, if you could pan around and just show, these are not protesters. These are just students wearing USC sweatshirts and hats, just sort of taking it all in and witnessing what is going on their college campus, what has been going on so many college campuses across the country. You see someone here with a Free Palestine flag, and it's interesting. I want to take you back real quick, David and Ellen, where we started. There's a circle over there. Those same original protesters are holding strong in the middle of USC's Alumni Park, but officers have moved away from them. So it's unclear, again, how this ends and what direction this goes in. I'll send it back to you.
What is that building called again? Because I want to get some perspective with where you are compared to where Air 7 is, and see if the confrontations that you're watching are the same as what Air 7 is watching.
Definitely. So the building is called the Dr. Joseph Medicine Crow Center for International and Public Affairs. And that is the building that students are surrounding, and then there's a line of police officers with the Los Angeles Police Department, some Department of Public Safety. They're also surrounding that building as well. We are in the middle of campus. Tommy Trojan is a few hundred feet that way if you're familiar with USC's campus. And you can see in our shot right now even more LAPD officers. I'll send it back to you.
Right.
All right, we're going to check in with Michelle Fisher, who's seen a lot of movement where you are, Michelle. What are you seeing now? Michelle? Okay, we seem to have lost. Oh, maybe.
Hi, all right. So we are on the ground too, in the middle of this situation as it continues to unfold, and there seems to be these moments where there's a bunch of movement and chaos, and the officers shuffle around. The crowd on the outer portion of this Alumni Park kind of disperses, and then the officers move around again, and then there's a more kind of intense scene where the tensions again heighten, and then they reposition themselves. So that's where we are right now, as the officers that are here have now made their way inside of the area, a bit more closer to that smaller gathering of the demonstrators that is kind of the center focal point of this demonstration right now. So again, that consists of, I would say, maybe about 150 individuals who have their arms linked in the middle of Alumni Park here, and inside of that circle of the individuals standing up is a group of demonstrators who are seated on the ground, and as they stand together in solidarity on the outer edges, there are some demonstrators still here because we hear chants of free Palestine. We're seeing individuals kind of go at it with the LAPD officers. There are words being exchanged. I mean, just the tension is very heightened right now. It's very uncomfortable, you know, to be in the middle of it, and you imagine what it feels like for, again, the students that are just either here, you know, trying to go to school today in the middle of finals week, the students who are here watching this all, the students who are trying to take part in the demonstration as safely as possible, and then again those individual demonstrators, students, some of them just community members who are here knowing that at any moment now they're gonna be in close contact with officers who are gonna forcefully remove them from this park. We see some of those officers have their weapons, non-lethal rounds of ammunitions kind of ready to go with their hand kind of close to the trigger there, and then the batons, we've seen those being used on people to push people out of the way, and the crowd starts chanting, let her go, let her go. So just a lot of kind of tension and chaos is the best way I can describe it, and now we're seeing the officers again push in as they kind of hear the commands to keep their spacing and keep their formation as they go in to do what they're being paid to do, which is, remove this group of individuals from this park after that dispersal order has been issued at this point almost 45 minutes ago. So that's the latest here from where we are, and we will go ahead now and send it back to you all in the studio.
We've seen every single protester with their cell phone, and a while ago the University Department of Public Safety said if you're at the center of campus, please leave. LAPD will be arresting people who don't disperse. So every single one of those protesters knows that they need to be leaving.
That's the undertone of what's going on. Let's get back to Josh Haskell right now, who is has somebody to talk to. Josh?
Yeah, I'm here with Lázaro Abuelo. You are a father of a student at USC who's here. Tell me why you're on campus. You also said you're a Los Angeles resident.
I am here to support my daughter. She's studying here, and they're protesting against the genocide. And that's why I am against the genocide. My family is against the genocide. We think that no kid deserves to be killed.
But why did you come down to campus?
Yeah, because my daughter started organizing too. So I say, we have to support Palestine. And that's why I am here. Not only to support Palestine, we want the genocide to stop.
Do you know where your daughter is right now?
Right now, gotta be somewhere because the police start chasing all the students. As you see, they are threatening, if we don't leave the campus, we are gonna be arrested. But the students are so brave. Look at them. They don't want to leave the campus.
Does that concern you, though, as a father, that your daughter is somewhere?
Even though it concern me, but my daughter did the right decision. If she rather to be arrested fighting for Palestine, I will be the happiest daddy. I will be the happiest daddy if she's doing the right thing. And I know she's doing the right thing. If the police arrest me now, I am willing to go with the students. I have no problem, because what I am doing is the right thing, fighting against a genocide. I have kids, not only the teenagers, I have a 7 years old, and I imagine being a father in Palestine, to see my kid be assassinated by Israel. That's not good. We are humanity. This is not a matter of religion, political, no. We are humans. We cannot support any genocide.
Well, we will let you go and find your daughter, and I appreciate you talking to us.
Free Palestine, always.
Thank you for talking to us.
Peace with Palestine, always.
Quite the story there. A father coming down to campus, his daughter, a USC student, partaking in the protest, which went on all day here on campus. He just told me, David and Ellen, as you all heard, he is not concerned whether his daughter gets arrested or not, whether he gets arrested or not, that she is standing up for what she believes in. So as we've been reporting all day, this is not just a student protest. You have family members of students here. You have people from the Los Angeles community. And it was just really a matter of time, as I talked to people today, that one of these solidarity encampments popped up in Los Angeles. Well, it happened today at USC, and as you can see, people that support this movement, support Gaza and the Palestinian people, have come down out here. Sean tells me something is going on behind me, so I'm going to step out of the way. And it looks like the officers are forming a circle once again around the original group of 30 protesters who continue to lock arms where we saw that milk in the middle of that circle. So this is the scene right now, and as we just can show you a little bit of the LAPD presence, and we will send it back to you.
All right, Josh, thank you. Be safe out there. We're going to check back with you in just a little while, but we want to go back up to Chris Christie at Air 7 HD. Chris, it seems like it has simmered down just a little bit from what it was just about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, just a little bit, David, but what's essentially happened is that large group from earlier this afternoon of roughly 150 to 200 demonstrators has dispersed, except they've dispersed only to create smaller groups that are still causing commotion here across campus and at surrounding intersections around campus. This is the original group right here that has refused to leave. They have locked arms. They have gallons of milk jugs in their possession there, and they are refusing to move. Now, LAPD has surrounded them. They will begin moving in on this crowd with zip ties momentarily. We've watched at least 2 people get arrested towards the Public Affairs building and brought over to a pair of paddy wagons that are now on campus, where they have situated themselves to start processing protesters as the evening goes on. They are in this for the long haul, LAPD is, and campus police working cooperatively together, making sure everybody gets their constitutional due process. And then across campus at Jefferson and Hoover, just off campus, is another crowd of about a couple of dozen who are now blocking this intersection with their original signs that they've been using all day long, and they are now shutting down traffic as folks direct traffic around them. They've got their flags, they've got their signs, and they are now blocking traffic. However, at this point, LAPD has not converged on them yet, although you do see that airship keeping an eye on all of this. There was another confrontation over on 36th and Vermont, and that situation appears to have been dispersed. There was a group of people at that intersection. An officer issued a help call from that intersection right there, where you see the intersection is now blocked off with yellow tape, and now Vermont and 36th is shut down to traffic. So needless to say, if you have no business in the area of USC or Expo Park this evening, best to stay away, because this is definitely a volatile situation that isn't showing very promising signs of cooling down. There are just too many people who are, it's just a very emotional time here on campus, and too many people in all different directions with different motivations here. And you can see LAPD trying to do their best to manage all of this crowd. A very tricky crowd control mission for LAPD, guys. Back to you.
Certainly, and the LAPD issued that dispersal order to remove the protesters at 5:30, so we're going to like 45 minutes plus with no luck yet. We're going to check in with Michelle Fisher. She has been down there on the ground as well. Michelle?
So yeah, as we heard Chris mention in Air 7, which gives just an overall picture of the situation here, where we are on the ground, it's kind of the feeling of, hey, this has to get worse.
All right, hang with us.
You know, the anticipation and waiting of...
Yeah, Michelle, if you can hear us, we're getting some hits on your mic. It's cutting in and out, but you do have a dynamic picture there. Let's try it again. Go ahead.
All right, so yeah, I think we have my audio now again, but what we're seeing here on the ground is just the anticipation of what's going to happen any moment now, this idea and kind of feeling that it gets worse before it gets better, as the officers are poised to begin making arrests, and as they're having to kind of watch their back from all sides, as you have a crowd of individuals who are sometimes supporting with chants, at other times agitating. We've seen water being thrown. Now we're seeing the officers kind of moving backwards, taking several steps backwards at the command of individuals who are in charge to say, hey, take a couple steps backwards. They wait, regroup. And that's happening every few moments or so until we are getting closer and closer gradually toward this group that's still in the middle of Alumni Park here. These demonstrators who are poised and ready to be taken into custody. And the individuals here in the park who are watching, waiting, cheering free Palestine as this happens. But when those arrests begin to be made and they're processing these individuals and taking them into custody, right, maybe we assume that these individuals who have the jail support number, who have already turned their cell phones over to the demonstration organizers, maybe these individuals go peacefully because they are ready and poised for what's going to happen to them. But then the question is, okay, what does everybody else that's on the outside, this group of students, presumably community supporters, individuals who are also rallying here in their own way, what happens? What do they do? Does it get chaotic there? Does that become emotional? And I would imagine that that's a concern, you know, for officers here who have to kind of manage the arrests that are going to be made, at the same time also keeping an eye on this crowd here that is very emotional, very tense, and kind of, I would say at times there are individuals who are certainly agitating the situation and drawing officers' attention away from what they came to do, do, which was disperse this crowd, and now they have to also manage this other crowd of individuals that also has thinned out some, but is certainly not thinning out probably at the rate that LAPD wanted it to at this point. So that is what's happening from our vantage point here on the ground, again, as we just kind of wait and watch and anticipate officers continuing to take gradual steps back and at some point disperse this crowd by arresting the individuals that are here for this solidarity with Gaza, what was supposed to be an encampment, an overnight encampment situation that is at any point now being dispersed. So we'll go ahead, David and Ellen, and send it back to you all in the studio now.
Yes, certainly things will heat up if they try that again. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. Let's go back to Josh Haskell, who has another interview for us. Josh?
Yeah, I'm still near that Center for International and Public Affairs campus building, only really 400 feet away from where Michelle is. I'm here with some USC students. The final day of classes, they are Friday. It will be up to the discretion of professors whether classes tomorrow are online or in person. I'm here with 3 students. You guys, tell me why you're out here today.
I'm out here in solidarity with the victims of everything that's happening in Gaza. And, you know, it's great to see people come together like this. It sucks that they're shutting it down because all this was a peaceful, it was honestly a solidarity sit-in. There was nothing more. There was a lot of stuff planned for this event. There was a film screening, there was a picnic, there were many things. There was even a yoga session. Yeah, there was a yoga session.
So you guys aren't happy with the way that your campus police security went in earlier 2 times today. We were here for that. You think their actions agitated this crowd?
It was a peaceful protest. It was a peaceful protest of mostly students standing in solidarity with the victims in Gaza and Palestine, and the school called the police on their own students, it seems. So.
And now you're seeing the escalation of this. You're seeing the LAPD here. What is it like to see this amount of Los Angeles Police Department officers on your own campus?
I'm afraid. I don't believe that they're here to protect us.
I am a Jewish student on campus, and I was not threatened one bit by the Palestinian protests, but I'm threatened like hell by these cops and by the institution of our school. That's what scares me, not the protesters. I'm a protester. They were peaceful. They were safe. The danger is the school and DPS and the police that they brought in.
Do you have a feeling right now that you don't know how this ends, and that's what you said you're scared? Can you elaborate on that?
We have friends in the middle there, and we have friends all over. We have friends with dead phones. We just want everyone to be all right, and honestly, I don't know how this is going to go.
And again, David and Ellen, I'm here with 3 USC students. They didn't want to share their names with us, but they are seniors, so this should be a joyous time for the 3 of you. Last day of class Friday, finals coming up, graduation.
Wow, graduation.
How are you feeling?
About graduation?
And just about this whole situation?
About this whole situation? I mean, it was bad enough when they didn't let Asna speak at the graduation, and that's kind of part of why this is all here. You know, I was here early in the morning helping them with all the stuff that they had out. This place was filled with tents, with matches, with everything. I mean, there was a big snack table. The DPS officers just started coming in and taking the property from the students. I had to go in manually and take it back from them, and they couldn't do anything about it. I was like, will you arrest me if I take my thing back? And they're like, you can pick it up later. And I just walked in and I grabbed it, and they couldn't do anything because this is not actually a justified shutdown of a sit-in because everything here was peaceful. There was no agitation. There was no incitement of violence. If these people were all here protesting for Israel, this would be completely different.
David and Ellen, while I have these students here, anything you want me to ask them, or I'm happy to just send it back to you?
It's good to hear their perspective, Josh, and interesting to see how they feel threatened in this environment and angry about Asna Tabassum not being allowed to say her commencement speech. So thank you to all of them for weighing in on this very difficult situation.
Right, we're going to check in right now with Air 7. This is a scene live over the scene of Vermont and 36th Street, where another contingency of LAPD officers has arrived there. And keep in mind, this is just one intersection where they've arrived. Also, there's another protest happening at Jefferson and Hoover, adjacent to the college as well, where there's a lot of protesters there, and LAPD having to be there as well. So a lot of different places that these LAPD officers have to be at once. As
night is approaching, the sun is about to set, and this thing could get even more tricky as officers might begin to try to disperse this crowd, which could anger the crowd and bring even more people in. But so we have two different helicopters overhead. Ellen was describing that scene on the right-hand side of your screen with those new officers coming to this situation. The left side of your screen is Chris Christie in Air 7 HD, who has been watching this confrontation for quite some time now. Let's check in with him. Chris?
Yeah, that's right, David. A lot of moving parts. We're keeping a close eye on all of it. The focal point right now appears to be once again on this original group of demonstrators who are refusing to budge here. We count approximately 50 people who have locked arms with an inner circle, an outer circle, and beyond that, LAPD waiting for the orders to begin moving in on this crowd. What they will do is they will approach, once they feel that the perimeter of the park is secure, they will approach this circle of folks and begin attempting to zip tie them one by one. But they have to prepare in case that this group is uncooperative, which there's every indication to believe they will not be cooperating, but we can hope for the best. In any event, Jefferson and Hoover, a separate protest taking place at that intersection, and you can see LAPD's airship kind of moving back and forth, reporting back to the command post the situation on the ground at these very... A lot of other stragglers have gathered, and that situation, which was very tense, and we did see a couple of arrests, does appear to be a little more tame. So once again, the focal point, again, focusing on that circle of students there in the middle of Alumni Park. Guys?
Just quickly, the Jefferson and Hoover intersection, is that a main thoroughfare? Can people get around it? Is that going to block up some traffic and people trying to leave?
It is, but Jefferson actually comes to a halt there at campus. So it's not a through street, if you will. It does go through South LA, but it does continue further south. USC is your intersection nonetheless, and there is
All right. It looks like they're starting to use some of those zip ties on some of those
Here
protesters
they go, one
now.
by one. This is going to be, I think, the first person in the circle that we've seen actually being detained, being taken into custody peacefully. And if the next 50 arrests go like that one, then we should be in good shape. David, you bring up a good point. They are fighting against daylight. The sunset tonight sets at about 7:30, so we're looking at about 1 hour before the sun sets here to arrest these 50 individuals.
Right, so that's when things could start getting heated, especially if USC doesn't want anybody to be spending the night on this campus in this sort of protest. That could get really tricky, and I guess the concern would be that more people would come to this campus as opposed to leave this campus. So we are approaching quickly the end of this newscast, but keep in mind we will stream what is going on live on ABC7 Los Angeles 24 hours a day, ABC7.com and the ABC7 Los Angeles app. We're going right to that as soon as we throw now to World News Tonight with David Muir. That's coming up in a matter of seconds, but keep in mind things are tricky out there in USC, and we're not leaving the situation there. Join us over onto our digital coverage coming up right now. You are now watching us digitally, ABC7.com and ABC7 Los Angeles app. This is a precarious situation as sunset is approaching, and protesters, this is a peaceful protest going on right now on your screen that we have been watching closely, but in other parts of the USC campus, there has been a great deal of violence and heated tempers. We're going to go through all of this as we continue to cover the situation at USC right now. Keep in mind, all of this is live at 6 with the sunset approaching. So let's start our coverage off with Chris Christie, who has been over the scene right now in Air 7 HD. Set the scene for us, Chris.
Hey there, David. We have already seen a handful of arrests, 2 of which coming from this circle of students who are refusing to vacate Alumni Park. LAPD has this group of demonstrators surrounded. They have 2 paddy wagons nearby as they begin processing these protesters one by one. So far, most of these arrests, well, at least the arrests that we've seen in the last couple minutes, have been peaceful. There were a couple of other arrests in front of the Public Affairs Library, which have been, well, not so peaceful. There was a real struggle as some of the protesters began throwing water bottles at police. Police at one point were surrounded by demonstrators. Things got very tense and violent for a moment there, and eventually that crowd did start to disperse. We've also seen protests gathering around the campus at nearby intersections such as Jefferson and Hoover. Right now, we'll go ahead and keep it here in this general vicinity because it does appear that they are starting to speed up the process here as these protesters in the middle of your screen. We count approximately 50 folks armed with their locks interlocked, and you'll notice in the center of the middle group there are a couple of jugs, several jugs of milk. Now that milk tends to be used in situations like this to ease the burning of tear gas and pepper spray. So it does appear that some of the folks in this group appear to take this to the bitter end. But so far, we could take some comfort in noticing that at least the first handful that we've counted, about 6 or maybe even 7 arrests now, have gone relatively peaceful. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it looks like they are cooperating, and the police are calling out each person. So this is a methodical approach. We're happy to say that there's no violence going on with this community. They are intent on being peaceful protesters, and as police name each person, that person will come out of the line, and then they will arrest that person and take that person away. I should say they will take that person into custody. We don't know what they're going to do with them at that point, but they are definitely getting to see like that. You could see how peacefully they're going. They point the person out, they come out of the line, and then they are then put in a zip tie and they're walked away. So this is orderly. Right here, they're making their point, they're making their protest, they're staying peaceful. There's a shot from the ground as well, that same person you just saw walk out. So this is the process, at least when it comes to this community, but there are other groups that are not so cooperative that we're also going to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, David, and it is good to see this as we see Air 7 HD still overhead, and you're seeing each person coming out one by one, because this could have changed very quickly the demeanor of these demonstrators. So again, you do see people still shouting and still talking, and they're still interlocking arms. But one by one, they certainly are making their message heard, and it really, I find it to be more powerful the way that they're doing it right now.
The other areas, though, are less peaceful. So let's check in now with Josh Haskell, who has been watching another part that about a half an hour ago was really heated. Josh?
Well, the situation here, David and Colleen, has changed so many times today. When we first arrived at 10 this morning, it was peaceful. Then it wasn't. The Department of Public Safety went in, tore down some of the tents 2 different times. And you just used the word orderly. I am struck by that as well, David. Arrests taking place right behind me where that circle is. One by one, students are being taken by the LAPD to a paddy wagon over there in the middle of campus. But we have to highlight that there are just so many people on campus right now. As you can just see these crowds in front of the Center for International and Public Affairs watching what is unfolding, and it is just unclear once those protesters gathered in the middle of Alumni Park, once they are all taken away, it's unclear what happens. It's unclear what happens to, are these all just students watching? We've just brought you many stories within the last hours that these are not just students, that these are people from the Los Angeles community. I just interviewed a father who was here because his daughter is a student partaking in the protest. So we're just not sure what happens, but at this moment it does feel orderly in the sense that the LAPD has begun making arrests and then taking those students over there to sit in that white van where they will eventually be taken off campus. So that's the scene right now. You have Department of Public Safety behind me right now. They are working hand in hand with the Los Angeles Police Department. And we need to highlight, David and Colleen, the Los Angeles Police Department does not usually come on to USC's campus. There are 2 officers that are assigned to the campus. I spoke with them throughout the day. Today they're here 365 days a year, but they are just here because of the amount of people that go here, live here, the importance that USC is to the city of Los Angeles. But this campus is controlled by the Department of Public Safety, and as you can see with a crowd this large, they needed the assistance of the Los Angeles Police Department in order to calm things, or try and calm things. But as we've been bringing you just within the last hour, things are just this constant roller coaster of tension, crowds running. Now seems somewhat orderly. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, Josh, hang on one second. As we describe this shot from Air 7 HD, you see about 10 people being processed right now, all of them with their hands zip tied behind their back. Everything is peaceful, but you see the guy writing stuff down on his clipboard there. They're all being processed and then eventually put into these paddy wagons. So this is what's going on right here. A lot of these are the folks that are peacefully going with the police officers. Josh, back to you. What I'm curious about is whether or not you are noticing more people coming to campus or people leaving campus. I'm concerned about that as the sun is going down.
Yeah, I'm not seeing as many people come to campus. I would say the crowd feels like it's been about 500 plus, 600, 700 for the last hour or so. Many of the people here wearing USC gear, USC hats. They tell me that they are students. Those are the ones watching. We don't know how many of the actual protesters are students. We believe it's a large amount, but definitely not all of them. As I keep running into people who tell me that they came here to support the students. There had not been a Solidarity for Gaza encampment on college campuses within the universities that we have here in Los Angeles. Well, today one started at USC, and people that support that movement came here to show up to support those students. So I wouldn't say that the crowd is growing, but I wouldn't say it's shrinking either. And we just saw the LAPD kind of move back this circle a little bit, and there is a little bit of movement going on right now among officers as they try and widen their control of Alumni Park. And I just want to repeat one more time, we are smack dab. 6 feet that way. Sure. LAPD or Department of Public Safety telling us everyone has to move 6 feet this way, so that, as you can see, they're kind of widening out. We are in the middle of USC's campus. Tommy Trojan is just a few hundred feet that way. We're at Truesdale Parkway, right in the middle of campus, not too far from Jefferson. And it is, again, a surreal sight to see arrests taking place right now in the middle of USC's campus. Final day of classes on Friday. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And we've been watching your coverage all day long, so we certainly appreciate all the work you're doing out there. But again, you have a vantage point where you've been there for so many hours. And when we're seeing some of the people watching, the spectators, have you talked to any of...
My cord might have popped out if you're talking to me.
I am talking to you, Josh, but I guess
we just lost him.
We just lost Josh, but we have Michelle Fisher. We're going to go to her. We have her live camera. Michelle, you've also been there covering it. Have you seen a difference with, we know the dispersal order came out from the LAPD. Have you been seeing more people leaving or coming in your area?
Well, Colleen, what we've seen is even though officers weren't here, it was just USC officers at one point, but there were, there was chatter around campus, right? Hey, LAPD officers are on the perimeter. They're going to be moving in at any moment now. So the sense that I got, and I got here around 3:30 this afternoon, was that the campus knew what this evening was going to look like after this morning and after those tents were kind of taken away and that happened. There was kind of a sense that, hey, the rest of the day is going to have some unique things unfold here on campus. And as Josh mentioned, and as we've been covering, right, this is the last week of classes. Commencement, graduation exercise is just a couple weeks away now. And what a way to end the school year, right? I mean, as you go to college, you kind of learn about democracy and rights and protesting, and this is kind of learning, I would say, in some sense outside of the classroom, as these students, not only the participants who are participating in the demonstration who are now being taken into custody, but also the individuals who are watching this unfold. I mean, this is a lesson in civic engagement outside of the classroom that probably is better taught this way than in textbooks, for sure. So I would imagine that for students here, this is certainly something that stands out as, hey, this is, my last week of class. This is what's happening on campus, and this is what I'm watching unfold. The individuals who are in the center who are being, taken into custody now, as we saw about 45 minutes ago, a phone number was given out to all of those individuals for, jail support, and that number that they can call to have help as they're taken into custody and as they try to get released and bonded out or that number was given to them. And also we saw these individuals turning in their cell phones. So some of that sense of peacefulness and, just kind of turning themselves over to authorities is something they've been preparing for, and I think that's why they're doing it in such a dignified way and such a proud way. I think it's a lot of pride as they each step forward and say, hey, okay, it's my turn now to go and be taken into custody, and this is why I'm here today, is to demonstrate that, hey, I'm willing to fight for this belief of mine, and I'm willing to do so and go into jail, police custody for that right. So as the smaller circle here, as individuals move forward, we see the arms are kind of getting stretched out a bit more as that happens. But it's kind of beyond that and on the outskirts of the park where we're still hearing the chants, let her go sometimes, free, free Palestine. We're hearing those chants, and it seems to be where that is a bit more of a possibility for there to, at this point in the evening, there's a bit more of a possibility there for there to be some type of emotional reaction to these arrests. But in terms of the individuals who are being taken into custody, they are doing so very calmly, very quietly, and kind of just saying, okay, it's my turn to go, and I'm doing so with pride. So that's what we can share, on our side of this all, as I try to step back into the camera a bit. I'm being told to kind of not take too many steps by the officer here, so I'll allow the live picture here to continue to play out, and our viewers can see what's happening. But that's what's happening here. And also something else to note, as I spoke about, graduation exercises, I spoke with someone earlier who said, hey, this just isn't about the broader conflict that's going on, but even as we get prepared for graduation, our valedictorian isn't able to give her speech, so that's also some of what's playing into this, and some of why we're seeing so much support from students here, even those who are not being taken into custody but are still here to either just see what's going on, to show their solidarity. So an interesting situation to happen at any time on a college campus, but I think certainly now with everything else happening across the country on other college campuses, with graduation being a couple weeks away, it certainly adds to the feeling here and how this has all played out over the past few hours. So that's what I can share here from this side. And David and Colleen, I'll go ahead and send it back to you all in the studio for now, unless there's any other questions.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I do. I agree with you when it comes to, young people. It's almost a rite of passage for generations now, for these colleges, these universities to be ripe with people who want to be heard, who have protested from the civil rights era to the Vietnam era to George Floyd to this. This is what happens on college campuses that we are basically used to. It does get contentious, as every protest is, but they are definitely voicing their concerns right now. And what really raises their ire is Asna Tabassum not being allowed to make her commencement speech. They felt like that is over the line there. Thank you, Michelle. We're going to check back with you in just a second as we continue to scour the area with Air 7 HD. And as you can see, from where we were this afternoon and this evening, things do seem to be calmer, more displaced, and as police are slowly getting some of these protesters and taking them into custody, the temperature seems to be lowering just a bit, Colleen.
Yeah, it's good to see. You do see that the officers are trying to move out some of this debris and the tents, but there's still a very large crowd. But you do see, David, as you see, some are just kind of peeling away and walking away, and we do know this is an exciting time for USC students as well, as so many of them are so excited to end their semester. Some are graduating, so that's an exciting time. But again, I think you've said it a couple times. Once night falls, it does sort of up the ante on the nerves out here. So of course it's in law enforcement's favor to get this dispersed as soon as possible.
Protests of the past we have seen get violent at night, and that's what we're concerned about here. In fact, we do have a phoner with Sergeant Brian Mueller with the LA Sheriff's Department, who's an expert when it comes to crowd control. I hope he can hear me. Sergeant Mueller, are you there? Perhaps not. Okay, Sergeant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Any words of wisdom as we watch the situation that the LAPD and USC police are dealing with when it comes to this crowd?
understand the students. Hopefully they will not allow their emotions to get out of control and do some things that provoke LAPD having to respond to protect themselves and others who are there peacefully.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking of being able to see everyone as of right now being taken away, put into custody peacefully, you know, we do see that they are being taken to the paddy wagon. What usually happens after they're processed right there? Do they end up going to the jail?
They'll go to probably LAPD staging area where they have field booking set up, and decisions will be made if there may be some other contraband on the person that requires them being taken further in custody over to a lockup somewhere or the county jail, or they may be cited out. One issue of citing them out near the location, they could just walk back over and get right back into protest. So that might not be an option that they would actually do.
No, that would definitely not be a great situation. We have talked about it. You know, it is 6:40, just after 6:45 p.m. We know that, you know, sun's going to set and it's going to start getting dark somewhat soon. Do you think that takes in the LAPD and all law enforcement might be taking that into effect on why they're trying to get everybody to be dispersed right now?
That will have some effect on how they continue to proceed. It may give some people the impression that they can hide behind the darkness and perhaps throw some objects at the officers and get away with it more in the dark. LAPD, I'm sure the incident commander on the field, on the scene right over there, is making momentary or moment-by-moment decisions how to best disperse it. I know they gave dispersal orders, and then from what the reporting was, a bunch of people did leave. From what I did hear, they gave other dispersal orders, and additional people left. Generally, you don't want to keep doing that because then people won't think that the dispersal orders mean anything. If you keep giving another 10 minutes, another 10 minutes, another 10 minutes. But that's a decision for the incident commander to make on the scene with the situation as it's unfolding.
Yeah, I just want to remind our audience that what you see on the left-hand side are live pictures. What you see on the right, that happened about 30 minutes ago or so when the crowd was especially heated, and this one group of officers got into a precarious situation with a much larger crowd that started closing in on them. I know it's a concerning situation, but eventually they brought in more people and they were all able to get this crowd under control. Back to you, Sergeant Muller. Have you been in situations that you thought were under control and then suddenly it explodes out of control? And what should we think about when it comes to this situation?
Have I been in those situations? The answer is yes. You may have people there for, on the surface, may appear to be the same reason, but you have people who are professional agitators that go out of their way to start something, provoke something. So the second half of your question was, tell me that again, please.
I was wondering, what do you think in this situation? How should we best, or police officers best prepare for what might be coming their way?
Make sure for the police officers, make sure the supervisors have control of their officers. The communication is there. That officers don't get engaged in a conversation, or not. I wouldn't say a conversation, but a speaking back and forth with protesters. No matter what the officer is going to say, the protester is going to say the opposite. You have to maintain emotional control. You're there to keep the peace. You're not there to provoke something, but you're also not there to be a punching bag for anybody. Distance gives you time, and time gives you options. And hopefully, if they have some clear objectives, if it's just to clear the park, which they appear to have been able to pretty much put a perimeter around it, and then they're making individual arrests. A lot of times, if you give a dispersal order and you don't make any arrests, then people think it doesn't mean anything. Many times when you start making arrests, that may be enough to get even more people to say, hey, the police are actually serious, and they're going to start making arrests. You need to leave the area. So LAPD is going to take their time. They're going to move methodically. The guys are well-trained. I've worked with them before, with the Metro guys. And they'll do what they can to maintain peaceful, and those that go beyond being peacefully protesting and violated some sort of law, then they can be arrested. Just so you know, I see a lot of them on TV that are wearing masks. When they wear masks and they fail to disperse, they are in violation of 185 of the Penal Code. which is evading partial or full disguises to evade some type of arrest. The COVID mandate of wearing masks ended a while ago, so those that are wearing masks may use that excuse because of COVID, who knows? But the fact is, with the dispersal orders have been given and they fail to disperse, they are subject to arrest for failure to disperse, and if they're wearing a mask, they can be additionally charged with 185 or penal code.
Oh, wow. I was wondering why they were disguising their identity. I didn't know if it was because they didn't want to get in trouble if they were students, or if for a whole host of reasons on why they would want to cover their face. Some of them fully, not just with the surgical mask, but really fully with face wraps and what have you. So, again, it is good to see. We're looking at live images on the left-hand side. You're seeing this group that were interlocking their arms in a circle. It certainly is much smaller, as you can see, but now it looks like they're just moving around to kind of, sorry, I'm looking at the earlier scene too, where they were sitting down, and now at least they're standing up. It seems like they are methodically asking them to come into their custody. So, yeah, hopefully they don't get taken away only to come right back. But it does seem like their tactics are working. It seems like people probably don't want to be arrested, especially right now. These are a lot of them are students, and that's the last thing they want to have happen.
This circle of peaceful protesters has shrunk quite a bit because they've slowly taken many of them into custody, and I'm sure they'll continue on until they are all gone. The question is the crowd that's on the outer exterior of this park and also in that intersection. At least the last time we checked that intersection, right about Jefferson and Hoover, there was a crowd gathering there as well that was blocking traffic. And back to you, Sergeant Muller, when it comes to crowds blocking traffic, do they face additional charges for that?
They can. They can. There are some vehicle code sections that are blocking sidewalks and blocking the streets, impeding traffic. There are other people that are not part of the protest that have a First Amendment right to free association or free passage through streets and public streets and sidewalks, etc. And so those people who are not part of the protest, they could be having their rights violated by these protesters who may be blocking sidewalks and blocking streets. They could be blocking emergency vehicles, maybe going to emergency call for service or taking an injured person to a hospital. So there is some restrictions, time, place, and manner restrictions that can be used, and the appropriate or the associated codes and that can be applied here if needed. Or they could just block the intersection, reroute traffic, and just let things fizzle out on its own.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to see this kind of fizzle out, because it actually looks like it kind of is happening right now. When you look at earlier images and to live images right now, when we did see Air 7 take a pretty good wide shot, and we saw a lot of people sort of walking around, trying to get to their classes, trying to get probably to their dorms and their housing, and you still see enough people around there surrounding them, but it is quite a bit smaller than it has been over the course of the day. So that's good to see.
Then I'd say the LAPD strategy is working. Even though they gave a dispersal order, it works to the degree that a certain number of people left to give from what I understand, another order to disperse. 10 minutes, a bunch of other people left. They got enough officers. And then, there's a couple of people that did something that required an arrest. That may be enough for some other people to say, I'm leaving, because they're starting to make arrests. And as time goes on, people have realized, the protesters, the students have realized that their political theater, they have gotten their message across. They're all over the news, all over the country, and several campuses across the country.
Yeah.
So maybe they got to what they wanted, and it's time to go back to study.
That, or they add fuel to the fire and we wait for what tomorrow brings, because some people might want to participate again tomorrow. I want to remind our audience what they're looking at right now. These are now 2 live pictures, one from the ground, one from the air, and as you can see, things have quieted down quite a bit, but there's still quite a few people on campus right now. That circle that was much larger just a few minutes ago is now much smaller. That's on the right-hand side, and those people are being brought into custody one at a time, and they are still cooperating, and that circle is shrinking. You could see the crowd is kind of spread out throughout the park and also into that intersection, but nothing at least heated right now is going on. But that can turn. The ebbs and flows of protests we often see, they get angry and they calm down, then they get angry again, they calm down. We're hoping that what we see right now will lead to a quiet night there on the USC campus.
Yeah, I hope so.
Sergeant Mueller, I hope I got that right. Brian Mueller, you've been talking to us. You were with formerly LA Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
Yes, 37 years, retired 3.5 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Well-earned retirement for you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your expertise in helping us understand this, and especially the little tidbit about the masks. We had not heard that before, so that's an important point, especially in this day and age post-COVID, where we often see a lot of folks wear those masks for a variety of reasons that are not about keeping the germs away.
Yeah, you have to have, in order for 185 to be in effect here in California, you have to have some other type of crime. And the crime is you fail to disperse. Then 185 has application.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. Well, we're going to continue watching the live images. We may be checking back in with you later, but thank you again, Sergeant, for joining us.
Enjoy your retirement. Well earned.
Anytime. Thank you.
Okay, so this is interesting. As you see this on your left-hand side, this is the area where they're basically staging all the people. And you notice they've even set up chairs there. All those people sitting in chairs, they have their hands zip-tied behind them. They're all being processed and eventually going into a paddy wagon. This is a fairly sophisticated system that they were prepared for. And in the beginning, it was just one at a time. But as you can see, massive amounts of people are now being brought in. They're all cooperating. And even the table on the left-hand side with forms, etc. Each person is being questioned, their information is taken down, and then they're putting them into these white vans right over here. Eventually those vans will be full and they'll move them in and out. But interesting that they would set up all those chairs. All those chairs are now full. There were only a couple of people in those chairs just a couple of minutes ago.
No kidding. It's just, they've learned a lot. You know, they debrief after all these situations, and so much of their training gets put into play. And it has been sort of reassuring, David, to see that the crowd has really come to get their message heard, and they have. But it has been very peaceful. I mean, there has been a few areas where it's been a little bit rowdy, but by and large, for such a big group of people who have gathered, they have done this in an orderly fashion. And as we look at these live images on the right, we are seeing each person being taken out of the circle. Again, they're very peaceful. They're not putting up a fight. They're going in, they're getting zip-tied, and they're getting processed. And then they're sitting on those fold-out chairs.
Well, when this protest began, Colleen,
We've been watching all of this taking place throughout the United States.
Stand by. We're about to go live with a cut-in. Hang on.
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
This is an Eyewitness News special report. We will join Jeopardy in just a few minutes, but first we are continuing to follow breaking news on the campus of USC.
And that is where a large number of LAPD officers are now working to clear the campus of pro-Palestinian protesters who are staging a protest in the center of campus. And we have been watching police arrest those protesters one at a time. You're looking at live images. You're seeing where those protesters who have been arrested, they are being processed right here. You see them with zip ties on. They're being processed, and they're doing it in a very orderly fashion.
So far, right now, at least, the last few minutes have been orderly. Let's go to Michelle Fisher, who is live on the ground for this quick update. Michelle.
Well, David, I'm going to step out of the way pretty quickly so you can see what's happening behind me. For our viewers who have been following along with us, we saw earlier there were many more people kind of in the center of this park here, but one by one they've been taken into custody, and now pretty much the only group that remains is about the, I would say, 20.
All right, we are joining you again live digitally. We had to break away there to do something for ABC 7. And now, as you can see, you noticed at 7 o'clock, if you were watching the footage, the live picture of both vans, those white vans are now full, and they have driven away. My assumption is they're going to bring more vans because more people are awaiting processing.
Yeah, and you know, we have Josh Haskell. He has been at USC all day this morning, right when he came in to show up for his work assignment. And Josh, you've done a great job out there. We're seeing one by one each person who has been in that circle being taken to be processed. But I had a quick question for you, not completely related, but we just spoke with the sergeant. I couldn't help but notice so many people are disguising their image or covering up their face. Did anybody talk to you about why they were wearing face coverings or trying to disguise their identity?
Well, it's important to mention Asna Tabassum because the valedictorian at USC who was not allowed to speak at graduation, the first time a valedictorian has not spoken at graduation because of her views on Gaza, because of posts that she made on social media and likes that she made. And when I covered protests in support of her on campus last week, just a few hundred feet from where I'm standing right now at Tommy Trojan in the center of campus, students were wearing masks, and they were basically telling me that this is a way to show that Asna has been silent, and we feel silent. And those students marched around campus last week, and they said, let her speak, let her speak. And we know that a lot has changed in this country since that protest and since Asna Tabassum was not allowed to speak at graduation. And what has changed is that there have been protests that have been erupted on college campuses throughout the country. And so, but a theme that I continue to hear today, David and Colleen, is her name, and that is why they're covering their faces. I also think some of them do not want to be identified by the news media here covering the ongoing protests. David and Colleen?
Yeah, and speaking of Ms. Tabassum, was there any talk of her possibly being there today or trying to talk to any of the protesters who are obviously supporting her position?
I have not seen her here today. I did not see her at the protest last week, and it makes me think that she, after doing quite a bit of media and being the face of this for a long period of time, she's kind of kept a low profile these last 10 days. And I'm looking at these students right now, David and Colleen, gathered in a circle in Alumni Park, and I'm wondering, are these the same students that were here? And by the way, these could be members of the public as well. But are these the same people that were here when I arrived here this morning at 10 a.m.? I'm just not sure because there's right now so many more people on campus. This is an active college campus. Final day of classes Friday. There are so many people here watching what's unfolding, and I'm thinking about this group of students in a circle that is shrinking as one by one they are taken away by the LAPD, and I'm wondering, were they out here all day? Was this their plan? Or did they just walk on their way to class and they saw some of students and community members taking a stand, and they said, you know what, I need to be a part of this. I'm not going to study for my finals, and they joined in. We know on college campuses you have many different opinions. There was a large group of Jewish students, about 100 to 200 Jewish students standing here watching, making their voices heard as well throughout the day. I saw a lot of actual successful dialogue going on, conversations between Jewish students and protesters of supporting Gaza, supporting the Palestinian people, sharing their views. That's what you find on a college campus. What you don't find is the LAPD coming in and arresting students and members of the community. That's not something I've ever seen before. And it definitely has shaken this campus the entire day. And it's still a surreal sight as it's unfolding right now. And I'm watching it as I speak to you guys over the phone.
Yeah, so many questions remain, and that is, next week is when finals are hitting, commencement hits in the coming days, and you wonder if it's going to grow in intensity or if this is the peak of their very loud statement. We just don't know. But with protests going on college campuses across America, and it seems to be a movement that is gaining in momentum, not shrinking. And certainly USC, with a situation with Asna Tabassum, they have put themselves right smack in the middle of it. And I find it interesting, Josh, when you say, you give us their explanation on why they're all wearing the masks. She has been silenced, their mouths are covered, so therefore it's representation of their student body being silenced, and it's part of their statement.
And David, I just want to say one more thing. Another chant that I'm hearing right now that is kind of honestly heartbreaking to hear is hands off our students, hands off our students. And that's a chant that is coming from the other people gathered here. I would say most of the crowd seems to be students, and you can tell that they feel violated. And in that interview that we did a short time ago, I spoke with 3 seniors who felt like this was peaceful and that the university is the problem, and the way that they have treated starting with Asna Tabassum till all the actions of today, with the Department of Public Safety. It's really heartbreaking to hear hands off our students, that they feel violated, their fellow students feel violated. But that being said, there was a dispersal order. These students did not leave, and this is what happens when you do not leave a college campus, a private university, USC here, Alumni Park.
We were hearing that just a moment ago, Josh, from a retired Sergeant Brian Mueller saying, once they do give the order to disperse, they really do need to act on that and start carrying out those expectations for the students and the protesters to leave the campus, or they are going to be taken into custody. Josh, thank you very much for your live report. We're going to go over to Michelle Fisher. She's also been covering this this protest all afternoon. Michelle, how is it looking from your vantage point? Are you noticing that people are coming in, people are leaving? Are you noticing that it seems like from our vantage point, it looks like people are dispersing, but it's a whole lot different from where you are?
Well, Colleen, at one point we were a lot closer to that inner circle that is now kind of thinned out as more and more individuals are taken into custody. We have since moved a bit further out, and right now where we're standing, there appears to be a lot of students. Now, keep in mind, this is the last week of classes, many students with finals. So what we've seen happen is trickling in a lot of individuals around us right now who have backpacks, who are stopping, presumably after they just left class, who are now watching this unfold. Maybe they were in class earlier this morning, maybe they had a final exam, and now that that's out, they're here and they are watching, like our viewers, like ourselves, as this all unfolds, and as their colleagues who attend class here, who are either community members, are taken into custody and participating in this demonstration. Now, as we want to point out, as these individuals are taken into custody, there is still a large group of people here who are seemingly part of this demonstration in another way. They're chanting, there is a bullhorn, there's someone, sharing information over the bullhorn, there's drums, there are individuals who are still participating in a way in this civic exercise and demonstrating here. So what happens after all the individuals are taken into custody? I would imagine that then the part 2 of this is that officers with LAPD want to kind of make sure every other individual that's here either kind of just looking and participating in a subtle way, that those individuals then also disperse this area. We'll be here, of course, throughout the evening as we prepare throughout the evening for our 11 o'clock broadcast. So we're going to be here as this all plays out and all unfolds. But again, there's still a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of noise literally being made from outside of the International and Public Affairs building, where there's still, I would say, probably about 500 students or individuals standing on the steps watching this all unfold. So what happens after LAPD officers have taken all of that smaller circle crowd into custody? Then what happens is they move their attention to the individuals that are here watching. And we've heard several times throughout the day commands from those officers, hey, maintain the integrity of the line. They still know that there's still much more to be done after these individuals are taken into custody. And the hope is that after having watched these individuals being taken into custody, rather peacefully, that it doesn't get chaotic again, because we've seen that kind of ebb and flow throughout the day of, starting from this morning at 10 o'clock with campus officers moving in to remove what were tents here in Alumni Park. When that happened, it was chaotic and there was tension and there was clashing between the demonstrators and those campus officers. And then throughout the day, there's been an ebb and flow of, at points it's been a little bit calmer, and then tensions have heightened again. Now things are seemingly kind of at an easy point. But again, after we can count how many people are in that circle now. There are 3 left, I believe, 3 or 4 left. So after all those individuals are taken into custody, what happens next? But we will be here as we have been all day for our viewers. And when that happens in about 5 or so moments, of course, we'll be here to report on what it looks like from the ground. So 5 people, I'm told 5 people still left on the ground. They'll individually get up one by one, as we've seen their colleagues do, go into custody, and then we'll be here to report, which hopefully, fingers crossed, is not this burst of kind of energy and tension as the rest of the crowd gets moved out and along on campus here. So we'll go ahead and send it back to you all in the studio. That's the latest here.
All right, Michelle, thank you for that report. As you saw from her vantage point, at least, things have certainly calmed down quite a bit. Chris Christie on the scene now. He is looking over what I find this scene to be fascinating, Chris. You see all these people now being processed.
It is fascinating, and just since we were last overhead here, you could tell just how much more orderly things have become. Police have managed to disperse the various crowds, to separate some of the smaller groups that were starting to converge. You see a lot of yellow tape delineating what is the crime scene here, where have things been cordoned off, and now you see a whole area where those detainees are now being sat down and processed one by one. A bunch of them have been placed into paddy wagons. 2 separate paddy wagons have now left the campus. They are now waiting for another driver, perhaps a bus from the sheriff's department, to come back and pick up the remaining protesters who have been detained here this evening, back over at Alumni Park, just a few feet away from where these folks are being processed. You can see there are about 6 remaining individuals still sitting in a circle in the center of Alumni Park, waiting to be detained as well here. But certainly appears that LAPD has done a fairly magnificent job of executing that dispersal order in about as peaceful a way as possible, especially when you think about the tension and the tempers that were flaring just a couple hours ago. With the exception of a few temper tantrums, most of this has developed as peacefully as could have been expected relative to what we were anticipating and what we were witnessing just in the last couple of hours here. So as the sun goes down on the USC campus this evening, this demonstration will come to an end and has come to an end. LAPD providing full support to the campus police here at USC, and things have taken a dramatically different turn here for the better, as the disturbance that was underway just a short time ago has really wound down, and even those intersections that we had our eye on earlier, where we saw some protests developing, those appear to have been cleared out as well. And LAPD, again, doing a magnificent job of keeping the peace here this evening. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it really is incredible, Chris, to see the way this has sort of been moving around today, this afternoon, and seeing what you were covering earlier today on some of the north of USC with the protesters going to certain intersections and corners. But again, we see, I believe,
the final guy, I think we're down to.
The final person is there now, David.
Mm-hmm. And he's holding the flag up, and then they're about to go in and get him, it looks like. So he is the last man, well, sitting. In this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're giving him the nod right now. It's your turn. Let's see what happens here. But they have whittled this, what was much, much larger of a couple of circles, down to one final individual. Maybe he sees this as a moment to make a final statement. It doesn't appear. Well, maybe he's going to get up. Yep. Okay, so this person, it's his turn now. So a rather dramatic shot to bring to you right now. You're watching this from upstairs, right, Chris? All right, we may not have Chris.
This is the last one to be taken into custody. The subject now dropping his flag, appears to be cooperating, and he will be walked over to that processing area, this makeshift processing area, as a throng of news media watch on here. It's been interesting, to say the least, over the course of the last couple of hours, to see the large media presence here. Media from all over the place, not just local media, but I mean, every publication you can imagine seems to be down there documenting all of this. And at one point, things got so hairy, it certainly appeared that LAPD had a difficult time delineating the news media and journalists from some of the protesters and even some of the innocent students who were just going about their business or trying to pull out their cell phones and catch a glimpse of what was going on. But again, they've done a great job of setting up police tape. You see yellow tape across this entire park. They have the media at bay watching along with you and I as we watch from up here in Air 7 HD. And you could see some remaining folks here who are still chanting here, and they have to be dealt with as well. So we had that inner circle, but there is another crowd here that is still circling the area, and if they don't back off, they will be in a position where they will each be placed under arrest as well. This is perhaps, I'm not certain, but perhaps the same group that had gravitated over towards the Public Affairs Library earlier. In fact, there you see the building over there on your right. There are still a number of people, students and perhaps outsiders alike, who have been involved in this protest all day long, who haven't exactly vacated the space. LAPD still has a fairly large crowd to deal with, aside from those core protesters who had formed those circles in the middle of Alumni Park. So I would venture to say there's still quite a bit to be done here as they lose daylight. They are short on drivers, I understand. They are waiting for some assistance, perhaps, from the Sheriff's Department to bring in a much larger bus. But if you see there on the right side of your screen, I think there's easily another 100 or so folks, perhaps more, that are going to be asked to leave or face the same consequences as those people that were in that circle.
Yeah, that is concerning, because a lot of people in that community there may not all be students, and who knows what their intentions are. There's sometimes, as we've seen in protests in the past, all sorts of different protests, sometimes there are people who just want to show up and, create havoc. And let's hope that's not the case here. But that crowd right there is questionable. They are not the same people that were in that peaceful circle that has just been taken into custody. Another thing that I'm thinking about this moment, and I would love to bring Josh into this conversation too, because maybe he's heard something, but the story ran, and in fact we ran the story yesterday, the majority of the advisory committee on Muslim life at USC has resigned. 11 of them, in fact, quit in protest of the university's decision to cancel Asnas Tabasum's valedictorian speech. But where this plays into what we see today and perhaps tomorrow is they're supposed to hold a press conference tomorrow, from what I understand, at the USC campus to talk about why they have decided to do this mass resignation. I'm not sure if it's a safe thing to have this press conference, even though I'm sure they want to be heard. But could that be a catalyst for more problems tomorrow? Josh, I think, is rejoining us right now on the phone. And Josh, are you there? And have you heard anything about this situation when it comes to this press conference tomorrow?
I am here, David. That is a really good question. That is not something that we've heard students talk about today. They've mentioned Asna Tabasum's name throughout the day. We told you about how the Let Her Speak chant is something I heard last week when I was on campus. It's something that I heard today. That's why many students are wearing masks. But I can tell you, David, something that we've been talking about all afternoon, something that I've been feeling all day being here on USC's campus. I'm just not sure what happens next. And now that they have taken into custody some of the protesters that were gathered in the middle, the crowd remains. I just want to show you something that's happening off to our side right now. It's a little bit of a tough shot, but Hector is going to go in and show you that the vans that were carrying the protesters who had been arrested, they are not here anymore because they are full. So you see a crowd of protesters who were taken into custody, surrounded by LAPD officers. And then there's another crowd over there kind of chanting, and they're talking back and forth to each other. Just sort of a strange scene. I'm sure that the LAPD is sending another bus here to take people away, but it is not here. So we have that scene developing. And then in the distance, just want to show you from our current position, you see a number of LAPD officers, and they are clearly in discussions right now about what happens next. We know that a lot of times in these situations, especially on a college campus, a lot of the people here, they have no intention of being arrested for this cause. They're just here to watch. They will disperse on their own. That is not really happening, David and Colleen. There's still, I would say the crowd has thinned out a little bit, but there's still a number of people just kind of chanting, hands off of our students. You see that line of officers surrounding them, and it seems orderly, but at the same time could change in an instant. And so I'm not sure what the LAPD's plan is coming up. They definitely do not want to agitate this crowd any further. And there's a chance that no one else here is taken into custody because that circle is now removed, but they will have to leave this area. There's actually some caution tape up, and we see the LAPD officers right now moving. I don't know exactly if they're going over to help the other officers that are near where the rest of those protesters have been taken into custody. Maybe they're moving from the area to calm the situation a little bit. Maybe the LAPD feels like their job here is done and they're going to move out. But that is the scene right now from our position in the middle of USC's campus. David and Colleen, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Josh, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go over and talk to Michelle Fisher. Michelle, can you see the officers moving through to your area?
Well, we've certainly seen some of the officers who were here kind of maintaining a certain line. We've seen that line disperse, right? It's not as formal as it was, and maybe there's some conversations being had about what happens next to kind of disperse this crowd. I mentioned the last time I gave a live report a few minutes ago that I'd seen a lot of backpacks. It seemed like there was a lot of students where we were in the area who would kind of come out of class to say, okay, what's going on right now? I actually want to bring in one of those individuals, a senior here, Cam Perrin, who kind of explained what was going on as he was in class just steps away from this all, getting text messages, right? What were those text messages saying? And then when you came out and saw this, what's your reaction, Cam?
Yeah, so first I remember getting an email at 2 saying that the campus was being closed down. And this morning when I woke up, all I heard was helicopters all over, and at like 8 a.m. And then when I come to class, I had to actually check in with my ID, my student ID, which I don't carry on me usually, so I actually had to show my email. And it just felt really weird coming into like a small gate with like 2 police standing outside of it. And then obviously that's when like the protest was going on before they actually like sent everyone away. And my class is right over there. And like 10 minutes into class, we got a text that was like, the campus has been completely shut down. Like if you're in Alumni Park, you have to leave. And we're all like looking out the window, like what's going on? And we just see like some hordes of people like leaving. And I mean, I was like, I gotta check out what's going on. So right when class ended, I walked out here and now all this is going on, I guess. It's kind of, this is my first time seeing like a protest or anything. So it's kind of it's very interesting, very crazy, very surreal.
Yeah. What do you make of this all? I mean, I don't know how long you've been out here, but there have been some really intense moments. I mean, it's you can feel it. I mean, just how tense it is. You could kind of cut the tension with a knife. It's emotional, whatever words you want to use to describe it. But what do you make of this all? How do you feel right now? And your senior year, especially, the last week of classes.
Yeah, this was my last class. I just walked into my last class here at USC, which is kind of crazy. But I had to come out here this morning when I first heard that when I first heard the helicopter, I was like, oh, there's something going on. And then online just saw that there were protests going on, so I came down here. And yeah, it's very solemn, very, like, this morning especially, it was like very quiet around on campus and kind of pointed in to what was going on in the center, which was like the megaphones and stuff like that. So this morning I decided to like stand up on the steps over here and just look out, because I'm kind of short too, and look out at just what was going on. And yeah, it was kind of just, I guess, yeah, to describe it, it seemed pretty solemn, I would say. It kind of felt pretty surreal, I guess. And yeah, just looking out now with all the loud cheering and stuff, it's not like scary, I don't know, but it's kind of, it feels weird to have it on a campus that's like sort of supposed to be like a safe area and everything like that. Yeah, it's kind of surreal, just looking up with all the helicopters and everything. Yeah, it's very interesting.
An unforgettable way, certainly, to end your senior year, you know, here. But I think an important lesson for you and your classmates and your colleagues on, you know, how civic engagement kind of plays out and how you can make your voice heard.
Of course, definitely. Fully agree.
Right, Cam. Well, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Good luck on everything.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So as we've mentioned, you know, a lot of people that are here now at this point in the evening are students who have kind of come out of class and said, what's going on, what's happening, who are here, if nothing more, just in solidarity with their fellow classmates to kind of experience this all together and to take it all in. And again, just a couple weeks away from graduation, it makes this situation a little bit more emotional, a little bit more intense, whatever words you'd like to use. But that's what we're seeing now. And in terms of this crowd here, there is still a significant amount of people who are in some form demonstrating with bullhorns, drums, chants, who at some point will also have to leave campus. And how officers are going to get that to happen, that's still TBD. They're no longer in such a formal line here with the officers in formation. That has been broken somewhat, but there is, you know, police tape and seemingly some conversation going on about next steps. So we'll be here for our viewers as that process continues to play out. For now, we'll go ahead and send it back to you all in the studio.
Michelle, thank you. Yes, a lot of fronts that LAPD continues to deal with right now. Let's go to Chris Christie in Air 7 HD, who has yet another crowd. We just saw them going through an intersection, Chris.
Yeah, that's right, David. As things wind down on campus, there's still a couple hundred people over there. Another contingent from the original group today has now moved across Expo Park here, right by the metro station, and coming up on Brewer Park, which is right next to the soon-to-be Lucas Museum. They are peacefully making their way up the street here, and they have come to a pause right there on the corner, right in front of the park, just a block away from the Coliseum. Again, so far, LAPD is monitoring their movements. They have not confronted this group yet. As long as they are peaceful and don't block traffic, perhaps they will give them a lot of leeway, but it's another situation they will continue to keep our eyes on. Reporting live from Air 7 HD, I'm Chris Christie, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for that live report and all this live coverage. We've been watching this. We're going to continue to watch this. Again, you can see this group right here. We see a lot of calmness on the USC campus right now as the night falls. We're hoping to continue to see the crowd disperse and go home, because we saw that one college student, Cam, say, you know, this is a safe place, so we want to keep it safe.
Right, and let's keep our fingers crossed for that. This is a tricky situation for police right now. We're going to continue to watch it. We'll update you as needed throughout the night, and of course we'll have full team coverage on Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock tonight. We hope you join us. Okay, you are now watching us digitally, ABC7.com and ABC7 Los Angeles app. This is a precarious situation as sunset is approaching, and protesters, this is a peaceful protest. There has been a great deal of violence and heated tempers. We're going to go through all of this as we continue to cover the situation at USC right now. Keep in mind, all of this is live at 6:30 this evening with the sunset approaching. So let's start our coverage off with Chris Christie, who has been over the scene right now in Air 7 HD. Set the scene for us, Chris.
Hey there, David. We have already seen a handful of arrests, 2 of which coming from this circle of students who are refusing to vacate Alumni Park. LAPD has this group of demonstrators surrounded. They have 2 paddy wagons nearby as they begin processing these protesters one by one. So far, most of these arrests, well, at least the arrests that we've seen in the last couple minutes, have been peaceful. There were a couple of other arrests in front of the Public Affairs Library, which have been, well, not so peaceful. There was a real struggle as some of began throwing water bottles at police. Police at one point were surrounded by demonstrators. Things got very tense and violent for a moment there, and eventually that crowd did start to disperse. We've also seen protests gathering around the campus at nearby intersections such as Jefferson and Hoover. Right now we'll go ahead and keep it here in this general vicinity because it does appear that they are starting to speed up the process here. As these protesters in the middle of your screen, we count approximately 50 folks armed with their locks interlocked, and you'll notice in the center of the middle group there are a couple of jugs, several jugs. Appear to take this to the bitter end, but so far we could take some comfort in noticing that at least the first handful that we've counted, about 6 or maybe even 7 arrests now, have gone relatively peaceful. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it looks like they are cooperating, and the police are calling out each person. So this is a methodical approach. We're happy to say that there's no violence going on with this community. They are intent on being peaceful protesters, and as police name each person, that person will come out of the line, and then they will arrest that person and take that person away. I should say they will take that person into custody. We don't know what they're going to do with them at that point, but they are definitely getting to like that. You can see how peacefully they're going. They point the person out, they come out of the line, and then they are then put in a zip tie and they're walked away. So this is orderly. Right here, they're making their point, they're making their protest, they're staying peaceful. There's a shot from the ground as well, that same person you just saw walk out. So this is the process, at least when it comes to this community, but there are other groups that are not so cooperative that we're also going to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, David, and it is good to see this as we see Air 7 HD still overhead, and you're seeing each person coming out one by one, because this could have changed very quickly the demeanor of these demonstrators. So again, you do see people still shouting and still talking, and they're still interlocking arms. But one by one, they certainly are making their message heard, and it really, I find it to be more powerful the way that they're doing it right now. Because
The other areas, though, are less peaceful. So let's check in now with Josh Haskell, who has been watching another part that about a half an hour ago was really heated. Josh?
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm. A new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Place just down the road from this position that you're looking at right now. Skyfox, unfortunately, cannot look at 2 different places at once. If they could, they would pan about 3 blocks over to where there's another sizable demonstration taking place in downtown Los Angeles. Time will tell if this was and there's another group of protesters. That's not even the one I was just talking about. So we're seeing people sitting in chairs, and I'm going to say this looks like the area where they've been bringing all the people that they've detained. So, and that's the desk I was talking about. So they've been bringing one by one all these protesters to that desk, and then they are now sitting them down. You can see much of them have their hands behind their back. They've been using zip ties to put their hands behind their back. We haven't been seeing handcuffs being used, zip ties. If you see the police walking around with those skinny, white-looking, and again, I think they are panning over to try and find another demonstration, another pro-Palestinian demonstration that's taking place at another nearby park. We saw a sizable group of people marching around what I presume is either USC's campus or the outskirts of USC's campus. So Sky Fox for now fixating in on the plaza where much of this has been taking place today. Doesn't look like any new arrests are being made. We're just going based purely off of what we're looking at in this live image. And what we're seeing is no more demonstrators being detained, but still a good amount of demonstrators on the outskirts of where this protest was taking place for much of the day. So this, where they're panning over to now, is where police have been bringing all the detained protesters. They, at least for now, do not appear to be sitting in jail. They are sitting on chairs outside. Time will tell whether or not these people are actually brought to jail, but we saw Fox 11 reporter Matthew Seedorf reporting for much of the afternoon. He was talking one-on-one with a lot of these protesters, and many of them had the same sentiment, that they are ready to be arrested, they are ready to go to jail. This is something that we've been watching take place around the country. Columbia University specifically springs to mind. Columbia University in New York City has been a hotbed for much of this pro-Palestinian activity. Sometimes people are labeling these protests as anti-Israel protests, but as you watch the reports and reporters comb through these crowds of people, it's very clear that the ideals are a mixed bag, to say the least, at many of these protests. Some of these protesters are anti-Israel. That is a sentiment that we've seen shared at some of these protests, but we've also seen a lot of sentiment that there is a place for Palestinians and for Israelis. Obviously, the point of much of these protests that have been taking over some college campuses, I should say partially taking over some of the college campuses around the country, the sentiment for much of these has been that they are pro-Palestinian protests that aim to basically tell their respective colleges, sever ties with Israel in any way possible. That's what the message here, that's the underlining issue that's causing all of these protests to take place across the country. These are, whether it's faculty, whether it's students, whether it's simply citizens of these communities, the message here has been, we don't want these universities to support Israel in any way. And obviously, and I'll keep reading from Fox 11 Los Angeles, here's the latest what we're getting from KTTV. They say that dozens of people were arrested after law enforcement broke up a large pro-Palestinian demonstration at the University of Southern California. This protest, by the way, is called Gaza Solidarity Occupation. That's Gaza Solidarity Occupation, and it is part of a larger nationwide trend of college demonstrations to support Palestinians in the Israel-Hamas war. Around 5 p.m., which again is just over 2.5 hours ago, LAPD officers arrived on campus and issued a dispersal order. Now, when they issued that order, we did not see the crowd disperse. So, a number of people have been detained as a result of this protest. All protesters were ordered to move or face arrest, and they were arrested. Up to 50 people were arrested, according to City News Service. That's a news agency in the region that's being quoted by Fox 11 Los Angeles. While many people have moved out of the park, hundreds of people still gathered around the perimeter, and that's what our camera has been watching for much of this. I'll call this, as we transition into the evening hours now, we've been watching increased activity, not only right here where you're looking right now, but we also saw a sizable group of protesters occupying another park nearby the University of Southern California. So let's take a quick commercial break, and on the other side of that commercial break, we're going to play some remarks from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who visited the campus of he visited Columbia University in New York City earlier today. Obviously, that has been one of the hot spots for much of this protest activity. The Speaker of the House showing up there and really disparaging some of the anti-Israel rhetoric that has been chanted at some of these rallies. And again, I'm only staying with this image because it appears that things have calmed down significantly. This was at one point, we were seeing quite a bit of friction between protesters and police. The LAPD came in, at sometimes we saw them running through these crowds. We saw a number of people being arrested, but much more pleasant sight to see as the sun sets in Los Angeles. Much calmer demeanor.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. This is a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
It's good timing because the camera's panning over to where a lot of those people who were detained, and I'm trying to make sense of this image in real time here because I see the audience applauding. So it's possible that they're now taking some of these people that have been detained. Many of them are sitting in those chairs, and it appears the officers are walking them over to police cars, presumably, to bring them to jail. Again, up to 50 people have been arrested. That's what City News Service says. That's a news agency within LA. Fox 11, Los Angeles, is quoting them. So that was one of my questions as we were watching this, is all of those protesters that are detained, they were brought over to those chairs to sit down, and I was questioning whether or not they would be brought to jail, and it does look like some of those people are being walked to police cars. Some of the protesters who have not been detained are applauding those protesters as they are being walked into those police cars. One can only assume that they are being brought to jail. We will check our news wires and, of course, check in with our affiliate, Fox 11 in Los Angeles, for any details about how many people may be processed into jail tonight. As we've been mentioning for much of this late afternoon, early evening, the message that a lot of these protests on these colleges, the message that they're trying to send to these colleges is don't work with Israel, don't support Israel in any way possible. Well, what does Israel have to say as a response to that? We actually did hear from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about this very subject. Let's listen into what he has to say. It's about 2 minutes long.
What's happening on America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. It has to be done not only because they attack Israel, that's bad enough. Not only because they want to kill Jews wherever they are, that's bad enough. It's also, when you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an anti-Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences. We see this exponential rise of anti-Semitism throughout America and throughout Western societies as Israel tries to defend itself against genocidal terrorists. Genocidal terrorists who hide behind civilians. Yet it is Israel that is falsely accused of genocide. Israel that is falsely accused of starvation and all sundry war crimes. It's all one big libel. But that's not new. We've seen in history that anti-Semitic attacks were always preceded by vilification and slander. Lies that were cast against the Jewish people that are unbelievable, yet people believed them. And what is important now is for all of us who are interested and cherish our values and our civilization, to stand up together and to say enough is enough. We have to stop anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine. It always precedes larger conflagrations that engulf the entire world. So I ask all of you, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are concerned with our common future and our common values, to do one thing. Stand up, speak up, be counted. Stop anti-Semitism now.
All right, that's the extent of Netanyahu's remarks about this ongoing situation at U.S. colleges nationwide. The sun is setting in Los Angeles. It's getting tougher to make out what's taking place there, but we did just see the LAPD pull up these larger white police vans. I'll be curious to watch to see if they start loading those vans up with protesters in order to take them to jail. We also heard from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He visited Columbia University today. Before we get into Speaker Johnson's remarks, let's go out to Fox 5 New York reporter Richard Giacobis, who's going to bring us the latest on protest activity at colleges in New York City, specifically at Columbia. Let's watch.
You are unlawfully obstructing pedestrians.
Dozens of demonstrators were asked to move away from the front of Columbia University tonight as pro-Palestinian students rallied against their school. On campus, others prayed at sundown in front of the dozens of tents spread out across Columbia's campus lawn. The university says it continues to negotiate with protesters to dismantle the encampment entirely. Meanwhile, it wasn't a welcome reception earlier for House Speaker Mike Johnson and his Republican colleagues who spoke on the steps of the school library this afternoon to call for action to stop hate and harassment against Jewish students. They were booed and heckled through much of their 18-minute press conference.
Our feeling is that they have not acted to restore order on the campus. This is dangerous. This is not free expression. This is not First Amendment. They are threatening, intimidating, saying that they will take violence upon Jewish students. We met with Jewish students who are in fear. They can't come on campus. They can't study for their final exams.
Johnson also joined GOP calls for Columbia President Manoush Shafik to step down, claiming that Jewish students on campus are living in fear.
We just can't allow this kind of hatred and anti-Semitism to flourish on our campuses, and it must be stopped in its tracks. Those who are perpetrating this violence should be arrested.
Listen to our demands. We are advocating for life. We're advocating for an end to massacre.
And although most students were not welcoming, the Jewish students who met with Speaker Johnson prior to his speech say the meeting was meaningful to them.
This is not a safe campus for Jewish students. The administration must take a stand, and if they don't want to, it's important that we have the Speaker of the House and Congress come to tell them to do it.
All right, that was Fox 5 New York's Richard Giacovas bringing us that story. One last quick look at the activity taking place at the University of Southern California, USC, where we are watching police, and I wish they were not panning away from those two white trucks. I couldn't quite make out if they were perhaps putting some of those protesters in the back of those white trucks to bring them off to jail. The sun is going down. It's getting a little tougher to see these images. Let's take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Speaker Johnson's full remarks at Columbia University in New York City.
Hey, it's Dr. Mike. Some new data about intermittent fasting has come out showing an increased risk of cardiovascular disease and death. Now, I've been doing it for 4 years. I'm a believer. It can lower your blood sugars. It can help you lose weight. It's not for diabetics and it's not for everyone. Check it with your healthcare provider before doing it. I'm Dr. Mike Sirigliano with your Fox Medical Team.
I'm Heather Sullivan with Sullivan Smart Sense. Rental prices have skyrocketed 18%.
leaders who had come through this institution in the past believed in religious liberty. They believed in democracy. They believed in morality and virtue and the dignity of every human person. They believed in the free exchange of ideas. And they detested mob rule. We are standing here right now on the steps of the Low Library. In this very building right behind us, Columbia University once awarded Winston Churchill an honorary degree, and it was Churchill who said, "It is manifestly right that Jews should have a national home where they may be reunited." We believe in that principle. And today I'm here to proclaim to all those who gnash their teeth and demand to wipe the state of Israel off the map and attack our innocent Jewish students this simple truth: neither Israel nor these Jewish students on this campus will ever stand alone. Today, Hamas issued an endorsement statement of the protesters on this campus. They called them the future leaders of America. It is detestable. All of this has to be said because the cherished traditions of this university are being overtaken right now by radical and extreme ideologies. They place a target on the backs of Jewish students in the United States and here on this campus. A growing number of students have chanted in support of terrorists. They have chased down Jewish students. Today, Hamas issued an endorsement statement of the protesters on this campus. They called them the future leaders of America. It is detestable. All of this has to be said because the cherished traditions of this university are being overtaken right now by radical and extreme ideologies. They place a target on the backs of Jewish students in the United States and here on this campus. A growing number of students have chanted in support of terrorists. They have chased down Jewish students. They have mocked them and reviled them. They have shouted racial epithets. They have screamed at those who bear the Star of David. We can hear you. We can hear you.
All right, we do appear to be having some audio-visual interruptions there. We apologize for that. I'm going to take a chance here to give you a live image. This is a live look at some of the protests. I should say this is the area around where we've been watching a lot of the protest activity taking place at Columbia University. Let's dip back into Speaker Johnson. Let's try and get this audio situation situated.
A Jewish student was stabbed in the eye with a Palestinian flag, and 45 students were arrested. At NYU, pro-Hamas protesters were shouting from the river to the sea. Anti-Israel encampments are popping up at universities all across this country. The madness has to stop. The madness has to stop. We just left a meeting with Jewish students who told us of the heinous acts of bigotry that they have experienced simply because of their faith. Their bravery is inspiring, much more inspiring than some of the activities we're seeing here. And they should never have to confront such hate on an American college campus. It's such a revered institution. Anti-Semitism has been growing in America, and it's clear why. Powerful people have refused to condemn it, and some have even peddled it themselves. From university professors to public officials, people in positions of authority have denied the horrific facts of September 11, 2001, the attacks on the United States that happened right here in New York City, and they've attempted to excuse or to ignore the barbaric attack of Hamas in Israel on October 7, 2023, where Israeli women and children were savagely raped and murdered, and infants were cooked in ovens. Crowds of radical activists have chanted death to America and on our own streets in this country. and sub-public officials have refused to condemn them. Others have openly defended these acts on campus, and the harassing and the intimidation and the threatening of innocent Jewish students simply because of who they are. They've called that peaceful protest, and some have even gone as far as calling for the state of Israel to be eliminated. These are words we expect from Ayatollahs in Iran, not American lawmakers and not American students. And unsurprisingly, it has given way to threats and violence in a generation of students who feel safe in their own classrooms, who don't feel safe in their own classrooms, or where they live or where they worship. Let me say this very simply. No American of any color or creed should ever have to live under those kinds of threats. That is not who we are in this country. Sadly, Columbia's administrators have chosen to let the threats, the fear, and the intimidation of the mob rule, to overtake American principles like free speech and the free exchange of ideas and the free exercise of religion. They have co-opted First Amendment arguments to protect genocide and to elevate the voices of anti-Semitism. They have proven themselves to be incapable of achieving their basic responsibility, which is keeping students safe. We just can't allow this kind of hatred and anti-Semitism to flourish on our campuses, and it must be stopped in its tracks. Those who are perpetrating this violence should be arrested. And I'm here today joining my colleagues and calling on President Shafiq to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos. As Speaker of the House, I am committing today that the Congress will not be silent as Jewish students are expected to run for their lives and stay home from their classes hiding in fear. In the House of Representatives, we've already acted to address anti-Semitism on campuses. We have passed a number of statutes to address this matter, and we call upon the U.S. Senate to act upon our legislation. I have a couple of my colleagues here that I'd like to share a few words. I'll turn it over first to the chair of the House Education and Workforce Commission, Virginia Fox, Congresswoman Virginia Fox, North Carolina. Virginia?
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Columbia University is in a free fall. Following the explosion of this anti-Semitism, the Education and Workforce Committee started investigating. So far, the committee has uncovered key failures in the administration's response to the anti-Semitic attacks and displays embroiling this campus. First, President Shafiq presented false testimony to the committee regarding the removal of Professor Joseph Mossad. No action was taken. In addition, the administration has suspended 2 Jewish students for a made-up chemical attack. So I have a message, President Shafiq, and a message for you all, too. The inmates are running the asylum.
That's right.
Take back control of this once great institution. You took action last week. It's time to act again. If not, the committee will pursue every possible avenue to create a safe learning environment for Jewish students. I yield back.
Next is Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis from here in New York.
Welcome to New York City.
Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. I'm so happy to welcome the Speaker to New York City, and we appreciate his leadership in coming here to condemn the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to fester on this campus. We just met with a group of students who told us that not only have they been bullied, but they've been, many of them, assaulted. They have been spat on. They have had to walk the halls of this campus to see swastikas painted. These are clear examples of anti-Semitism, and it's shocking to see that it's happening in the most diverse and welcoming city in America. It is truly outrageous, and it's clear that the president of this university cannot control the campus. She cannot and will not hold students who are doing these types of anti-Semitic activities accountable, and that she cannot keep the students who are of Jewish faith, who have paid a lot of money and have worked very hard to get to an Ivy League institution like this, that she cannot keep them safe. And that is why I join my colleagues in calling for her resignation. Thank you.
Next, another congressman from New York, Anthony D'Esposito.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you are a protester on this campus and you are proud that you've been endorsed by Hamas, you are part of the problem. When you cheer on the fact that you enjoy Hamas and Hezbollah, you are yourself part of the problem. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to join with you here today in calling for the immediate resignation of the President of Colombia. She has failed her duty. She is not keeping students safe. And we see on this campus the hate-filled speech that is carrying through this country.
Another New York congressman, Mike Lawler.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for being here in New York. I want Palestinians to be free, too, from their oppressor, Hamas. And every single one of you students that support Hamas are an absolute abomination. It is shameful, shameful that you would support a terrorist organization that butchered and beheaded and burned innocent women, children, and babies. I went to Israel a month after the attack on October 7th, and I watched a 21-minute unedited video, raw footage of the attack. I watched exactly what Hamas did. And sadly here in America, we have students endorsing the butchering and brutality of a terrorist organization. If you want a ceasefire, the fastest way for a ceasefire to occur is for Hamas to surrender and to release the hostages. And if you can't call for that, you are a pathetic embarrassment to this institution and to students everywhere. It is time for President Shafiq to resign in disgrace. She has lost control of this campus. She has lost control of this institution. And after listening to her comments inside, it is clear that she has no intention of getting this university under control and ensuring the safety and well-being of every student. That is what is entitled to students attending this institution. If the students are not safe, if the institution will not act, Congress has a responsibility to do so, and we will.
I want to thank my colleagues for sharing their thoughts here. I want to say this as well. At the start of the American Revolution, the doors of this institution, once known as King's College, were closed. When the war ended, the institution reopened and was renamed Columbia College. It was a shift from the tyranny of the monarchy to the freedom at the heart of the American experiment. And now the forces of hatred and oppression once again are on the march. They've begun to try to close Columbia's doors to a segment of students. To every Jewish student listening to us, no matter where you are around the country, you have my word. The U.S. House of Representatives will do everything in our power to ensure that you are safe, you can freely practice your faith, and you can go to school just like everybody else. We will punish those who have allowed this violence and bigotry to go unchecked. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Mr. Speaker, what about the anti-Zionist Jews in the camp celebrating Shabbat?
We met briefly with the president and her top officials right before we came out on the steps here. We encouraged her to take immediate action and stamp this out. And our feeling is that they have not acted to restore order on the campus. This is dangerous. This is not free expression. This is not First Amendment. They are threatening, intimidating, saying that they will take violence upon Jewish students. We met with Jewish students who are in fear. They can't come on campus. They can't study for their final exams. This affects everybody's lives, and it affects the image that we portray to the world. This is not who we are as Americans, and it's time to act like
Have you spoken to the president about bringing in the National Guard? A number of senators have done that. Are you urging the president to do that as well?
My intention is to call President Biden after we leave here and share with him what we have seen with our own two eyes and demand that he take action. There is executive authority that be appropriate. If this is not contained quickly, and if these threats and intimidation are not stopped, There is an appropriate time for the National Guard. We have to bring order to these campuses. We cannot allow this to happen around the country. We are better than this. We are better than this, and I'll ask the president to do that, and I'll tell him that very same thing.
All right, so we did want to bring you a little bit of what Speaker Mike Johnson had to say at Columbia University. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, the latest on the Israel-Hamas war.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. It's a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm. A new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Support its ongoing war in Gaza. It's been inspired by ongoing protests and the arrests last week of more than 100 students at Columbia University specifically. We've also seen students from Massachusetts to California who are gathering by the hundreds on their campuses, setting up tent camps and pledging to stay put until their demands are met. From what you're reading alone, from your perspective, is all of this protest activity here stateside making any sort of stir in the Middle East at this point?
So it's creating a lot of wind in the sails of different protests and protest movements in the Middle East. It has a lot of effect on grassroots level organizations. In Jordan, we've seen a lot of protests, and the fact that they all of a sudden see people protesting in the United States, students with the same messages, with the same flags, with the same banners, obviously gives a lot of wind in to their sails. We see the same thing in student bodies that are protesting across the West Bank, in that are part of this growing international movement protesting the war. So, in that sense, it does make a lot of news. It is not going to be something, or is unlikely to be something, that ends up affecting the way the Israeli government does actually develop the war. Right? These protests are not going to have anywhere enough strength to mount that kind of pressure on the Israeli government. The only place that they could end up, though, having some impact, and it could end up being an important impact, is if they persist, and as the movement leaders state that they intend to persist and intend to expand and escalate, then they could end up mounting pressure on their different U.S. representatives, Congress people, senators. They, in turn, could apply pressure on the Biden administration. Now, again, realistically, is the Biden administration going to, in an election year, turn its back on Israel and completely reverse its policy as a result of these protests? On the one hand, unlikely. On the other hand, we are seeing that there is growing movement within, specifically the Democratic Party, that is applying pressure on the U.S. administration to at least throw its weight towards influencing Israel. If not stopping the war, than influencing Israel, restraining Israel. We saw this again after what happened with the incident with the World Central Kitchen aid workers that were killed by an Israeli drone on April 1st. All of a sudden, the Biden administration managed to exert enough pressure on Israel that we've change in terms of the entrance of humanitarian aid and the entrance of all kinds of things into the Gaza Strip, the establishment of the maritime corridor. All this we're seeing as a result of U.S. pressure. So it is possible that these protesters can hope that they will manage to achieve enough pressure to their congresspeople and in turn apply pressure on the Biden administration. But that is really like all they can hope for. It's very unlikely that we'll see the developments that this will impact the way governments operate in the Middle East, at least at this point.
Protests continue around the U.S. tonight. Let's move on. Hamas released, and let's pull up this video in full screen because we want to look at it in full. So Hamas released a hostage video on Wednesday showing a well-known Israeli-American man who was abducted from the now infamous Nova Music Festival on October 7th. This is Hirsch Goldberg Poland, and he's been in captivity for about 200 days. This is a still image from the hostage video. We're not going to show the full thing. He was clearly speaking under duress. He's also missing part of his left arm, but this is the first sign of life we've seen from him since October 7th alone. It's worth saying, however, that no one can confirm when the video was recorded. I'm curious, how is Israel and its citizens reacting to the release of a hostage video?
So I'll say a couple of things about the hostage video and specifically this hostage Hirsch. First of all, he was seen on October 7th in videos that were published from the kidnapping where his arm was already blown off. So we saw that actually happened during the attack of October 7th. Secondly, in the video, Hirsch also says that he is coming close to 200 days in captivity. And he discusses at length at the end of the video wishing his family a happy Passover to the extent that they can have, saying that he wishes he could celebrate with them. And we're currently at the beginning of the week of the Jewish holiday of Passover. So this obviously is not definitive confirmation, right? This video could have been shot a while ago and he was told to say that and released now. But it is, I would argue, more likely that it was shot in the last week or so. Just if I go by the historical patterns of the way Hamas does film these videos, usually they don't play them that much in advance in terms of like deciding what day they're going to release and what not. So I would estimate that it was probably filmed in the last week. Obviously, again, I'm saying that as an academic, not as an intelligence analyst person. That's in terms of like when it was aired, or sorry, when it was filmed. Now, in terms of the reactions in Israel, the reactions of the family members of hostages and the people who are out protesting by the thousands for a hostage deal was severe. In response to the release of this video, there were spontaneous outbursts of protests within Israel. Some of these got more violent with actually, torching fires and things like that on highways, all calling upon the government to basically come to some sort of decision about how it's going to release the hostages. Because what is happening right now is the hostage deal is completely frozen. Hamas has not changed its position for the last, I would say, at least month or 6 weeks of negotiations when negotiations were still ongoing. Hamas said that it is sticking to its position that it requires complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and an ultimate ceasefire in the last stages of the deal, but they have to be agreed upon in the first stages of the deal. Israel has said that's a non-starter. And so despite ongoing negotiations and even a summit that occurred in Cairo 2 weeks ago, nothing has actually happened. The family members are saying that Israel needs to stop waiting for Hamas to be the one to say, okay, here's what we're willing to offer. And instead, Israel needs to offer its own deal. It needs to offer its own terms. It needs to offer its ways to retrieve the hostages. The family members are also protesting the fact that in Israel there is growing sentiment that there's going to be an invasion of Rafah. There's more and more indications of that. Maybe we'll talk about that later. That there's going to be an invasion of Rafah, and the Israeli government is saying that this is going to increase the pressure on Hamas in order to reach a hostage deal, which, military experts in Israel are saying that could happen. At the same time, the family members are saying maybe that's true, but in fact, only 3 hostages thus far have been rescued alive as a result of IDF activity. All the rest of the hostages that have been returned alive were returned in a deal, and also we know for a fact that at least 3 to 5 or 6 different hostages were also killed as a result of IDF activity. So the family members of hostages see this video, they say there's a life sign, we know that he's alive. Applying more military pressure right now is not something that they want to support. They want to support Israel coming to a different outcome, bring the hostages back first, and only then going forth with the war.
I want to talk a little more about Gaza. So this is some video we saw this week from the Israeli Air Force. Israeli warplanes pounded the northern Gaza Strip for a second day on Wednesday in a fierce assault that has broken weeks of comparative calm. The IAF posting this, I believe, yesterday. I want to ask you about Rafah further down south in a minute. But first, let's discuss the rest of the Strip. What do we know about what's been targeted in Gaza this week so far alone?
So we saw on Monday, I believe, starting Sunday, we saw more on Monday, barrages of rockets that were fired from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, specifically the Al-Quds brigades of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, took responsibility for these rockets. And they said that they're doing that in defiance of the IDF to show 200 days into the war, it was 200 days, we're marking the 200 days of the war yesterday. At 200 days into the war, we're still able to fire rockets from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, from where the IDF says it has operational control since December. Well, look, we can still fire rockets. What we're seeing really now is the IDF retaliation to that. We're seeing, and the same thing continued on Wednesday. We saw more rockets that were fired towards the areas of Sderot, Nivim, Nir Am, Kisufim in Israel, and in turn, the IDF carrying out these, as you said, like massive bombardments that are really died down in the Gaza Strip and the northern parts of the Gaza Strip in the last several weeks. As far as we know, what the IDF is targeting is primarily different launching sites. In order to fire rockets, you don't have to actually have someone on the scene. You can set up the rocket launching sites, months in advance, and then just, input a code, pull a trigger, depending on the type of rocket that you're firing. So the IDF is targeting a lot of these launching sites themselves. In addition to that, the IDF is also targeting different, what they call terrorism infrastructure. That could be anything from different weapons warehouses. Terrorism infrastructure can also be an apartment building in which the different organizations, either Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, have one of their headquarters, right? That also then becomes, the code name is terrorism infrastructure. So mostly what we're seeing in these pictures, what it says down below in Hebrew there in the messages of the IDF is attacking terror infrastructure. So that means, again, not necessarily launching sites, but really what this is the IDF retaliating a display of force. After the Palestinian Islamic Jihad showed that it still has activity in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF is now showing in return, well, we're not afraid to return to substantial bombings in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip as needed. The IDF has also announced that it is going to carry out a major operation in the areas of Beit Lahia. This is one of the neighborhoods in Gaza City. In response to these rocket launchers, the IDF had announced to the civilians in Beit Lahia who are still there to immediately begin evacuation, saying a major operation is coming. So all this is the IDF sort of showing back, you're going to do display of force, we'll do display of force in the northern parts of the Strip.
And so let's talk a little more about Rafah. So the IDF has conducted all necessary, and I'm going to read a little bit of reporting from Reuters right now alone. So the IDF has conducted all necessary preparations to take Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah, and they can launch an operation the moment it gets government approval, according to a senior Israeli defense official who spoke with Reuters on Wednesday. We've talked about this looming invasion for so long alone. Let's remind the audience, what exactly is the IDF's objective in Rafah?
So Rafah is the most southern city in the Gaza Strip. It is actually a city that is divided in two. The border between Gaza and Egypt cuts Rafah in half. I mean, this goes back to many years ago. By now, it's two separate cities. But that's just to say that it's right adjacent to the most southern border of the Gaza Strip, and that's where the Rafah crossing is. Since the war began, the IDF, already dating back to October, called upon Palestinian civilians to evacuate from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip to the south, and the south meant the Al-Muasi region above Rafah and the Rafah area. Then when the IDF invaded Khan Yunis, it also called upon civilians to evacuate towards the Al-Muasi area. So right now, condensed into Rafah, there are estimated between 1.4 and 1.6 million Palestinian people, a lot of them internally displaced. The entire population of the Gaza Strip is roughly 2.2, 2.3 million before the war. And they are all within Rafah and the adjacent refugee camps, primarily Al-Muasi refugee camps. Alongside that, Hamas has battalions that are stationed in different cities. Hamas built itself over the last 15, 16 years as an army, and we saw this. We saw this in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Hamas had divisions that were in charge of different areas. There's battalions of Sajaiya, the battalions of Jabalia, battalions of Zaytun, each one trained differently, each one having its own missions. In Han Yunis, Hamas had 4 different battalions. They were responsible, some of them for rocket launching, some of them were responsible for security, and they were very, very strong. Similarly, in Rafah, Hamas still maintains 4 battalions. A battalion is a fighting unit. It's one of the ways that a terror organization like Hamas transforms itself a little bit into being an army rather than just having, sort of activists out, operatives that carry out random violent attacks, quote unquote. It develops a much more regimented organization in which there are officers, there are intelligence units, there are people who are in charge of logistics, there are people who are in charge of supplies, medical supplies, communications. All these things are things that Hamas has been building and modeling after the way Hezbollah built it over the years. And this is really what let them carry out such an effective attack on October 7th, right? That's exactly what we saw. It was not a bunch of, terrorists who are just trained to go fight without any organization, go fight and kill. It was a very, very well-oiled machine. In Rafah, there are 4 battalions that Hamas has. And really what Israel is stating, and we see this backed up by history also, that should the war end now and Israel just pull back, Hamas will rebuild. These battalions are strong enough, they're powerful enough, even though Hamas has lost roughly 18 or 19 battalions out of its 24, 25. With these, it can still retake Gaza. It will still be the only governing body in Gaza. So as far as Israel is concerned, it is saying we need to invade Rafah in order to uproot the last stronghold of Hamas, because after that, they will not be able to rebuild. I will add that there's also a central city in the Gaza Strip, Deir el-Balah, that also has not been invaded by the IDF. The IDF is also starting to set its sights on that, and either in parallel to Rafah or before or after, the IDF is also going to want to invade there. Alongside this is also obviously the issue of the hostages. Where are they being held? According to a lot of estimates, a lot of them are in Rafah, since the IDF has a lot of presence throughout the Gaza Strip, hasn't found them. So that's also one of the missions, obviously, but that's not the main aspiration of the invasion of Rafah, because again, that could be achieved by other means. The main aspiration is the dismantling of this infrastructure of these battalions.
And those battalions are something that we've been talking about for quite some time. I just want to hit on the humanitarian angle to this as well, because international allies, including the U.S., have been watching the humanitarian situation in Rafah closely. Does it feel like it's safe to say that we won't see an Israeli ground invasion until something is done on the humanitarian front?
Well, that has been a pledge that Israel gave to the United States, and it is something that realistically Israel would need to do. First of all, Israel, as is under so much international scrutiny and specifically pressure of the United States to improve the humanitarian situation, to not have another situation where you have scores of Palestinian civilians that are dying as a result of an IDF operation. So Israel needs, in order to have the U.S. backing, which it needs, diplomatically at least, and also materially, in order to carry out this invasion, Israel needs to satisfy the